I'm in a different location again because I can't settle with where to film, but hey. Today's video is going to be a little chat to camera. I talk quite a lot about mental health on other platforms and I just kind of integrate it into my content and just make it part of the way that I talk on my platforms. But I haven't really spoken about it, I suppose, as much on my YouTube, so I thought I'd make a dedicated video because I've got contamination OCD. And what better time to talk about my experiences with that than to talk about my experiences with contamination OCD during a global pandemic? Because this has been a test, I can tell you that. So I've written down a couple of points as to how I want to talk to you guys about this and the kind of different stages that I went through personally. This is just my own experiences. Everyone experiences this differently. I used to just say OCD rather than contamination OCD, but I find contamination OCD makes people a bit more aware of the type of OCD I have got. So this is my own experiences. You may have OCD and experience very different things, but this is my own experiences. I thought I would share them with you guys. If you don't know what contamination OCD is, basically my version of it is essentially a fear of germs almost, but within an obsessive compulsive need to protect myself from that fear. So initially, mainly it stemmed from physical sick bugs like vomiting and being absolutely terrified of that, and just really being uber clean, washing my hands constantly, ripping my skin through washing and scrubbing and just not touching things. And like basically, if you remember the swine flu advert that came out years and years ago when someone sneezed on their hand and they pressed a button on the lift and then someone else pressed that button and opened a door and it was like this green smudge being transferred from item to item, that is kind of how my brain functions on a daily basis, basically. It's not quite as bad with more of a cold flu type thing. However, more recently, the contamination element of it, rather than the actual illness, is the thing that freaks me out a little bit, and I just kind of see the different possibilities of how I could touch something and pick up the germs from it. I think I can still function fairly well with this form of OCD, but there are times that it does take over a little bit. For context, a couple of years ago on Christmas Day, my sister ended up, I don't know what it was, but she was sick a lot. She was vomiting a lot on Christmas Day, and I was meant to go to my dad's, I think like 2 or 3 days after Christmas, and I think what I ended up doing was going on Boxing Day morning because I could not bear to be in the house because everything I touched, I was just so paranoid, and I was using the same bathroom and like I just couldn't function being in the same house without having a panic attack every time she was sick or every time I had to get food or something like that. So I removed myself from that situation. That is one of the worst examples I can think of. But during a global pandemic, it's quite different. It's, I didn't ever think about what kind of thing my brain would do in this kind of situation because it's not really something that one thinks, if there's this massive illness that just puts the whole world into lockdown pretty much, how would I react? So here's my 9 steps as to how I personally reacted in lockdown and with the global pandemic with contamination OCD. So the first thing that obviously happened was that word started to spread about coronavirus. I think at the start of the year, at the start of 2020, and it was very much just this thing that had spread throughout China and was going to other countries but hadn't really come near the UK yet. Probably would, but wasn't that big of a deal around us yet, and life was still continuing on as normal. We were still going out to dinner, we were meeting friends, we were going to work. We weren't too worried at that stage, and I didn't feel like I needed to think any differently at that point. But in the back of my brain, niggling was this kind of like, if this gets worse, you've got to be more careful. But my brain is already thinking in the sense of what to and not to touch, and using my sleeve to touch things or my elbow. So I didn't really need to adapt my thinking too much to start with in like phase 1 of how coronavirus hit the UK. Stage 2 though became a little more extreme. It was very much suddenly a thing. It was suddenly here, it was suddenly very prevalent, and it was suddenly extremely worrying, and something that apparently then my OCD was suddenly like, right, okay, let's kick in, let's get this contamination sorted. Now, on the news, there was a lot of stuff about hand washing. Up in our place of work, we had posters added about washing your hands for 20 seconds and singing happy birthday and things. Now, I always wash my hands in a very particular way. I used to work within an air ambulance service, and there was posters all around there telling you exactly how to wash your hands from medical ways. So I have always been aware of the proper way to wash my hands. It sounds weird saying that because like a lot of the jokes were made like, okay, do people actually not know how to wash their hands? But no, not everyone uses soap when they wash their hands, or not everyone actually like washes properly and gets in between every area. I use a nail brush personally. So anyway, those kind of things were suddenly everywhere. Suddenly everyone was getting into this panic about it. And for me, I was thinking, okay, I'm not feeling great about this, but at the same time, my brain has been conditioned to think like this since I can remember. So I can look after myself, and I know the correct way to treat my own brain right now and to treat my own hygiene. That did not stop me having panic attacks at work on an almost daily basis up until the day that we were told we could work from home. I just didn't feel good. I felt like my own health was put into other people's hands, because I could wash my hands when I come out the toilet, but I still have to touch the buzzer and touch the door to get me back into the office. And I can use my sleeve and stuff, but there's only a certain amount of ways you can do that without touching something yourself by accident. It was very much reliant on other people. I didn't like that. That made me panic, because people were coming into the office that were a little bit ill. And I don't think at that point it sunk in as to like, if you've got a temperature, if you've got a cough, you do not go outside. You stay in your house, you isolate, you shield. Don't do that to other people. So yeah, stage 2 was like the panic setting in of, oh, this is no longer in my control. I can do what I can and I'll continue to do that, but it's down to other people now because we were still in the office. Stage 3 was when we started to get sent home. So I think this was kind of staggered and company dependent at the stage that our company sent us home, but we were sent home, sent to work from home, and I think most people thought, oh, this will be a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then we'll be back in. But it got to the point where I actually ended up buying myself a desk, because I thought, okay, it's going to be a bit more permanent. There's the desk. And I was right to do that, because that was in March, I think. So yeah, so that stage 3 kind of became like, all right, this is a bit more serious. But for me, I was able to stop having panic attacks. I think they told us we could work from home on like a Tuesday, and I went into the office on a Wednesday to clear up my stuff, and then was home from the Thursday onwards until now. And that stopped the panic attacks, because I no longer needed to put myself in a situation where I didn't feel safe. I no longer needed to put my own health into other people's hands and rely on the fact that other people wouldn't come into work if they were potentially ill and potentially had corona. Now, stage number 4 kind of transitions over. So I was working from home, however, I have an 8-year-old sister who was still going to school. And at this point, it was very much like, kids aren't as affected by this. It's not as big of a deal. But for me, the fact that she was going to school and she was seeing her friends and there wasn't these big social distancing measures in place, and I think it was like a week, it might even been less than that before the schools were then shut. But it was worrying for me, because that is already something I find quite anxiety inducing. The idea that all these kids have all these different germs that could give them to my sister, and then she'll come home and give them to me. That is something that does really plague my brain at times, because most of the illnesses that come into the house, like the vomiting bugs, it starts with my sister, which obviously she cannot help, she is that age, but it's something that I find quite worrying for my OCD. It doesn't help me very well, and is one of the reasons that I kind of push myself more in the direction of being ready to move out, because then again it's just me in control of my own health within my own house, at least. So working from home, sister's still in school, there's still that worry that that contamination could be brought in, and I felt very much the need to like almost spray her with cleaning chemicals when she came in. Obviously we did not do that, she had hand sanitizer, but she's 8, she doesn't get it in the same way, and I don't want to put my insecurities about my own hygiene and things and my OCD onto her. Now, number 5, stage 5 was not good. Stage 5 was that I had to go and do my food shop for the house, because my stepdad was, I think he was getting over a cold or a cough or something, and my mum was also getting over a cold or a cough. It was not coronavirus, it was just colds that they had had and they were lingering, but because she was coughing, we didn't want to, obviously, her to go out, so I was the one to go and do the food shops. Yeah. Like, I honestly, it felt so bizarre, because I think the second time I went, Tesco's had become like this militarised zone in which you could only go in one direction, and they changed the store layout, and it was just bizarre. It was in the middle of this transition to becoming PPE, PPE, personal protective equipment, like shields up against the tills and things, and I didn't like it. I did not like it. This was also a point where it was there was quite a lot of uncertainty as to the right way to protect yourself, I think, as well. I wore gloves for the 2 trips that I took, and then since then have seen things and been told that wearing gloves isn't a good idea because you could transmit germs from one thing to another on the glove. In my head, wearing a glove stopped me from feeling that fear of then getting into my car, driving home and having that like 5-minute drive where I was terrified to touch anything, no matter if I'd hand sanitised. So what I think I tended to do was have one gloved hand and one not. So I would have like my phone or my shopping list in the non-gloved hand, and that would be the hand like that if you needed to do like this or something with your hair, then I would very carefully do that with the non-gloved hand, and I wasn't touching anything with that hand, whereas the gloved hand was everything on the shelves and the trolley and things. I didn't know the right way to do things. I didn't know what the right way to do it was. At this point, hand sanitizer, face mask, everything like that, very, very sold out, very hard to come by. And I think I remember going to look for paracetamol because ibuprofen, which is all I take personally, because I can't swallow paracetamol because it's not coated, and the coated ones are gigantic. It was all sold out, and I was just terrified because, very kindly, a friend Beck sent me some paracetamol, which just made, I honestly, up here was my worry for not having any paracetamol, because if I got coronavirus, I was told not to take ibuprofen, so I was drugless, essentially. She super kindly sent me some, and it sent my worry from up here to down here, because in my brain I was making my OCD a lot worse, because I was like, you can't even, you know, you cannot risk this at all, because if you get this, you can't take any drugs because there aren't any to buy. And it probably sounds a little bit stupid from the outside, but it's all those kind of things that contribute to this form of anxiety that powers my brain to make me think, what can't I touch? How do I need to pay for things? Can I touch my bag? That is the way my brain worked. I was getting so paranoid about getting my purse out of my bag and getting my phone out of my pocket, and my shopping list was on my phone, and then I'd get home and like disinfect my phone. Whether or not I went over the top, I don't know, but the fact is I managed to keep my family safe and healthy, so I don't think I can consider it being over the top when it's a pandemic. Stage 6 was the stage I was at for the absolute longest. When my mum was actually absolutely fine and healthy again, she took over the food shopping, so I ended up doing 2 food shops for the family, and then she just took them over and did them. And then for me, I didn't need to leave the house unless I was going for a walk, and I've been doing a walk every day without fail, a walk or a cycle, to make myself get out there and be active. But basically, unless I was doing that, I didn't leave the house. We were wiping down every single item of food that came into the house because we didn't know what we should and shouldn't be doing. So we had some wipes with disinfectant on them, and everything came in that was wiped. I think we did that for about 3 food shops maybe before it just was too much, and we thought other people can't be doing this. But that is the way that my brain works with OCD. I think very much about, right, okay, this bag of apples was touched by someone else and then they put them back. That person had previously sneezed on their hand and we need to clean it for that reason. This is how my brain works, and it's not pleasant at times, but that was how we lived for a couple of weeks. And then stage 7 was kind of when everything became the norm for me. This just was how it was. There wasn't we'll come back to work in 3 weeks, or we'll give you an update next week as to if we'll be back in the office. It was no longer that hopefulness that this would all just go back to normal, and it was the acceptance that this is bizarre, this is not normal, and we don't know when it will be normal again. I stopped checking the news. I just stopped looking because I couldn't deal with seeing the death rate and seeing the contamination rate in my area, because it just terrified me more and more, and it made my anxiety flare up to the point where my hands, thankfully, are no longer red raw anymore. I had my knuckles here would go completely raw, here, every fold and bend of my hand, and the knuckles would crack open as well and bleed quite regularly, which was great fun for my bed sheets and towels and things. So at stage 7, became very much like accepting of the situation. I felt calmer about it. I did what was better for my mental health, and I think it helped. Stage 8 is really set in like the past 2 or 3 weeks, but that has been pushing myself to go out more than just on a walk. So a couple of weeks ago, I went to Marks and Spencer's. Actually, it was maybe about a month ago, but basically I decided that I was becoming so terrified of going out to a shop that I thought, when we were told we were allowed to do this again like normal, which obviously we still haven't been, but whenever that day was going to come, I thought I would be way too terrified to do it even then. And I didn't know what that would mean for going back into the office at work. I didn't know what that would mean for just trying to resume a normal life, but I felt my OCD was making me so terrified of the germs and of the contamination and of how I was going to react within my OCD that I didn't feel like I could do that. But what I have always been quite good at is understanding my OCD and understanding why I'm feeling things. So I decided to go to Marks and Spencer's. Now, I'm specifically saying Marks and Spencer's because if I had to pick a favourite food shop, I would pick Marks and Spencer's, as far as one can enjoy a food shop. So I thought, right, I'll pick the one I want to go to, and I will go and get something that I want. So I went for food as well, but I got a houseplant, my aloe vera, it's that up there, which is called Florence. And I made myself do that, and I don't think I wore my gloves because I heard by that point that we shouldn't be doing that. Or maybe I did wear them and that's when I heard that we shouldn't be doing that. And I had my hand sanitizer and I just had a basket, I paid contactless, I got back in my car, I scrubbed my hands with my hand sanitizer and I drove home. And I did it, and that was good. And I've been trying to slowly integrate bits into my day like that, and that contains things like 2 weeks ago, we live in a very small area, so my mum and I walked into town, and I think I went into 2 shops and just walked around the shop, had a little browse, went back out, didn't touch anything, used hand sanitizer, masks, etc. But the nature of just doing that, and obviously we're allowed to do that, the shops are safely reopening at the moment, and we live in such a quiet area that I was able to do that without being bombarded by other people there as well, so it worked really well. So doing that was really helpful. Last weekend I went into a bookshop which was just brilliant. I just went in on my own into the bookshop, wore a mask, hand sanitized, really tried not to touch anything, chatted with my friend that works there from a distance, and it just felt nice, it felt normal, and it made me feel relaxed to think, okay, I can do this and I'm not gonna get ill because I'm safe, I'm looking after myself, and I cannot have the mentality of anything else other than that. Obviously, feasibly, yes, I can get ill. I'm not gonna say it's impossible for that to happen no matter how clean I am, but I need to tell my brain that it's safe for me to go outside because I know how to take care of my own hygiene. So that was stage 8, and I'm happy that I've moved into that stage. Stage 9, I feel like, is the stage I'm worried about, the one that is yet to come, or that we're on the bridge of at the moment. And I don't entirely understand what the rules are with this, but as I don't intend to be doing it, I don't think that matters too much at the moment. But stage 9 is allowing other people to come in to my home. I live at home still, I live under my mum and stepdad's roof, I pay rent, but ultimately I live in their house, so I can only control this to a certain extent. And really, if they want to invite people over within the lockdown rules, I can't do anything about that. But I can ask for it not to happen. But basically, the allowance now is that we can have people come into our homes, I think, within a bubble or within like a neighbourhood visit. Like, I think basically you're allowed a household visit by the sounds of it, with masks and things. I assume, as I said, I'm not entirely clear on it, but basically there's been some updates in which people can now come into your houses, I think. This is when you guys were like, no, you're completely wrong, Beth. By the time you're watching this anyway, we might have changed even more. Now, I think I could deal with people in the garden because it's an open space and we can all sit very far away. And whilst we've got a nice size house, it's still impossible to completely distance yourself. Like, if you need to walk around to go to the toilet, you're gonna have to walk around somebody. So the idea that other people would come into my home and I would have to trust their hygiene terrifies me, because this is my safe space. This is where I know everything is safe, everything is hygienic, everything is clean, and I know we're all clean and everyone respects it. But as soon as you bring other people in that don't quite respect it in the same way or understand how I feel with it, because obviously my family live with my OCD and they know exactly how I'm like. But the minute someone comes around for lunch and asks for the ketchup, and then they use the ketchup, and then I want to use the ketchup, my brain is just thinking about them touching their ketchup and the germs they have transmitted onto the ketchup. My brain is thinking about the glass that they've used, and yes, of course we wash things up, but still, that doesn't shut my brain up sometimes. So stage 9 is one that I'm struggling to come to terms with a little bit, and I would like to be able to come to terms with, because I think I need to, if this is going to be the way that the world moves forward, no matter what pace. The pubs reopened at the weekend, so I don't know what that is going to mean for the transition of how lockdown moves forward, because a lot of people were stupid in London, so I don't know if that means we're going to regress a bit, and whether London perhaps will go back into lockdown or the nation will go back into lockdown more severely. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. By the time you're watching this video, this could all be completely outdated information. But I'm playing it by ear. I'm trying to be safe. I'm trying to slowly introduce my brain back into a normal world so that when things do start to ease, I don't send myself into a panic attack, because I can't deal with having the panic attacks every day. I feel like this is an immensely emotionally vulnerable video, and I hope that if you have clicked and watched this, you've clicked and watched it because you want to learn about OCD or you want to know my experiences. So I hope it's offered that to you. But basically, I just wanted to talk about it in like the stages that I've personally experienced it, in the hope that it can help one other person going through this, to know that you're not alone, to know what I've gone through, to know that what you're feeling is completely normal. If you're feeling anything remotely similar to this, I am always open to chat with people as well. In a more private space, you can find me over on Books Nest on Twitter and Instagram, and you can send me a private message if you wanted to chat about your own experiences with anxiety or with OCD. I think here nothing's normal anymore. Everyone deals with this differently. People with different strains of OCD will deal with this differently. People with different strains of anxiety, people with no anxiety. The things I've been saying to you right now, you might be thinking, why is that OCD? But the thing that is so unique about OCD, that categorises it as OCD, is the obsession and the compulsion to do things. And for me, that is the image of this green germy smudge on my hand, that I've touched the ketchup and I need to wash my hand. And if I do not wash my hand, it will take over my brain. That is the obsession and the compulsion of it, and that is the part that I find really uncomfortable, that makes me feel anxious. And most of the time, I can function really well with my OCD. And most of the time I consider it part of me, and I wouldn't say I like it, but it makes me me, and that's fine. But sometimes it's terrifying, and sometimes it really buggers me up and messes with my brain. But yeah, having contamination OCD during a global pandemic has been a really interesting time. One of the things I am thankful for is that my brain is already hardwired into thinking like this. When me and my mum were talking about the food shop, and when she was ready to go to the food shop again, one of the things I said was my concern was that my brain is hardwired not to touch something and then touch my face if I'm in a public space and I don't know that my hands are clean and the environment around me is clean. My brain already thinks like that. My brain already thinks, don't use your hand on the door handle, use your elbow. That is already how I think. So on one hand, it was easier for me to ingrain myself into thinking the way that the government wants us to think in terms of our own hygiene and washing our hands. But on the other hand, all of this news makes it so much bigger in my head and made me really struggle. So it's been an uphill climb, but I'm good. Working from home has helped me so much, and not being rushed to go back into an office. I feel so much calmer for that, and so much happier, the fact that I'm able to do this. So that's helped a lot. I'm gonna wrap this up here because I think I've made my points. I hope you found this interesting, insightful, helpful. I don't know. I at this point in my head don't even know if I'm posting it. Obviously, if you're watching this, I have. I'll see what I think when I edit it. Thank you guys so very much for watching. I don't really know what to say about commenting below, but obviously if you would like to comment down below your own experiences during lockdown, please do. You can give this video a like if you found it enjoyable in any way. You can also subscribe if you want to see more of my videos. I will talk more about mental health in the future and things as well. It's just that I've never done a dedicated video for it before. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Keep smiling and stay positive.